And the Senate then accepted they concurred with our proposal of amendment. That's a couple of weeks ago, and then it went to the governor, and the governor has signed it. So it is now in law.
S60.
S60, yeah, so that's
No money.
fine. There's no money yet, yeah, so that's happening, that conversation will be happening, in the appropriations process, but in the meantime, the governor's legal staff, they always review bills before he takes any action, and they identified a small inconsistency in between two sections actually on who had the final authority to authorize award payments or grant payments, but I'm careful about that language. I can't remember which it is there. But there was this inconsistency, and the governor's office reached out to me and to Senator Ingalls to say, want to flag this for you. Governor would like to sign the bill, but just would ask that the legislature take some action to resolve this inconsistency. And Senator Ingalls and I were both on board with that. So if you read his statement, you'll notice that it said something to that effect. So we'll be either asked to put something in the budget, or maybe it would fit in our miscellaneous ag bill or Senate's miscellaneous ag bill. There's a germaneness question there, and I don't necessarily know the answer, but we'll figure that out.
So now that it's existing statute, right, we could add an amendment, even in the same session that
Yeah,
we're
so.
amending it.
Yep, yeah. Other bills, so we've got most of our bills are now out of the House and are in the Senate. I know that the Senate Ag is looking at 573 today and has invited, maybe, I don't know if you've gotten asked to come in, John, but that's paragraph 537?
739.
739, sorry. Boy, these numbers are all these odd number bills.
I was invited in
As
to
a
speak to
farmer,
it.
right?
Yeah, and I said, I let them know that you presented the bill.
Yeah.
So Linda's supposed to send an invitation to you as the presenter of the bill, and they still want me to go down.
For what?
Yeah. Yeah. And my stance hasn't changed. It's exactly the way it came out of this committee. I'm fine with that.
We should probably talk to Greg too.
Yeah, they could.
And then, Michelle, you went off to another committee to,
That was about the right to garden yesterday,
okay,
and they seemed to think it was not controversial and they were very happy with it. So it seemed, it went to the Economic, Housing and General Affairs Committee. And they thought the right to garden sounded lovely. They were very encouraging.
okay, good. Richard, have you heard anything about,
I have heard nothing on baby formula. I don't know.
maybe you could check and see where it was sent?
Yeah,
And if you have a colleague on whatever committee
yeah,
sent to, or somebody who you
yeah.
can chat with, you can see if they're.
That one, we're gonna have to watch out for that one because nefarious actors.
Okay. All right,
Let's get Mary Catherine.
Oh, and Ashley Bartlett.
good.
Ashley gave a great floor speech on that as well, and Mary Catherine and all the other mothers.
We are not sure where we are with the bill that Jed reported on, but that's probably in the Environment Committee or Natural Resources Committee, Senate. So remind me to check in with him on that. Miscellaneous ag bill that Greg reported on is also in the Senate Ag Committee where you would expect it to be. I think they took testimony on that or are scheduled to this week also. So do you have anything out for all the bills? And of course, the municipal ag bill has third readings today. And then we'll be done. And no April Fools.
Did you hear what I wanted to do, Michelle? I wanted to stand up and ask the speaker if we could kick 941 down the road one legislative day in the spirit of the day that today is.
I don't think we want to.
Yeah, well, I will.
We could have Jed interrogate the chair.
Yeah, I picked a good day not to be here.
Oh, Jed's gonna be back.
We'll be back. Okay. So, the plan, just sort of long-term going forward, is we're gonna be working on the Senate miscellaneous ag bill. We'll get somebody in here. You'll have, so tomorrow we've got, the agency coming in to speak to a couple of short sections on, there's the pesticide compact repeal, which I think, well, shouldn't be controversial. I'd like to hear more about, a little bit more about that. And then there was a section dealing with the number of times you get to get licensed to
Mm-hmm.
be a certified.
Applicator.
So we'll try and deal with those tomorrow. And then we've got kind of a lot to talk about with the hemp piece of it still. So we may not dig into that until next week. And there's also the seed part, which seems to be a long, interesting section. So we'll spend some time with that.
Are there bills in other committees on our side that came over from Senate that have any jurisdiction in this room as well?
Not that I know of, but possibly. And that does remind me, though, that the hemp piece of our bill might be of interest to
Judiciary.
or GovOps. Yeah, I don't know. There's also lots of bills that are still in that, that half of our wall that we could revisit and see if we want to put into 323 if it's germane.
Dave, how does it work? I'm thinking of Act 181 and S 325. How does it work when, it's not like that bill would be assigned to us, but given the discussion about tier 3, it's a lot of our constituency, it's farmers, it's loggers, it's rural Vermont are affected by that. And if there are going to be any changes, like how could this committee have discussions or hear testimony on that? We're not really allowed to.
Well, I think we have some leeway, and if there's a section that is specifically mentions agriculture, that gives us more, or forestry, more. But I think that we can also go and sit in on hearings and the committee. The chair, I have spoken to the chair of the board just to be sure that forest or farming and forestry under 250 feet are exempt from Act 250, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So that doesn't change. There is the question about roads, driveways.
And what Allison was talking about yesterday, like if you're residential home and your sugar house are on the same lot.
Yeah. Or if you're a farm or if you want to build farm housing.
Right.
That is exempt, it's not exempt.
Right. Yeah.
In terms of the idea of taking a small bill and adding it onto the miscellaneous, I'm wondering about the Rep. O'Brien's bill about compostable stickers. We just heard about that the other day.
Yeah.
I feel like we took a baby amount of testimony on that at one point,
Very little, yeah.
but it feels like it might be a decent idea.
Yeah, I think so too. And while it's fresh, maybe, Patricia, we could start with the Vermont Retail Grocers Association.
Our buddy.
We've had them in and
Okay.
They're gonna love us this year if we pass two bills that are gonna change retail stuff, but that's.
I'll reach out to them.
yeah. So do you know the bill we're talking about, Patricia?
It's 478.
478. Okay.
That, you can give it to.
The only thing, Michelle,
Yeah.
like we talked about formula, I don't know if Vermont's a big enough state to move the bar. You know, how many bushels of Chiquita bananas come into Vermont? I agree with it,
Yeah.
100%. I just,
Yeah.
John, who would you, that's certainly the like big question, but who else do you think would you like to hear from?
I mean, it'd be interesting to hear, say, somebody who knows about places that have done this already, like the EU, or working towards it. And it may not even be an EU. I
Have any
think.
states done it yet?
Yeah, maybe California, I don't know. I mean, I think that the obvious thing, I mean, the first step would just be to transition to a a biodegradable sticker rather than vinyl.
why does Chiquita need to have a sticker on them at all?
Yeah, maybe you could check in with the state councils, state legislators and CSL. They can tell you
Oh, yeah, okay.
if anybody else has done it.
Yeah, okay.
Leg council maybe has that answer too.
Could we do it where we just require Vermont labeled products to be like as a start? Like if we could do like a phase in, like Vermont labeled products must be labeled with biodegradable things. And, we could put some kind of future thing about, if there are other states. We're getting good at that. That's we could.
Well, it's just phase into it, so
Yeah.
people enough time.
Yeah, there's also, there's stickers that come on the fruit when it comes into the state. And then there's stickers that are applied in the state. So maybe there's a distinction that we could make there.
It'd be useful to have some history and context to know what the requirements are when labels are required by law somewhere. And why they ended up being why does everyone have one? Every little piece of fruit have one. And why are they made of plastic?
Right.
I mean, why did all that happen that way?
Yeah.
And why is it still, why is there a reason we need to keep doing it that way?
Is AI answering that question?
Well, apparently there's a handful of states that have enacted strict laws about labeling with compostable stickers and packaging. So California, Washington, Colorado, Maryland, and Minnesota.
On fruit?
It just says compostable materials, stickers and packaging. So yeah, I would assume that would be fruit
Well,
and everything.
do you wanna, do we wanna have the grocers in, or do you wanna do a little research first?
Let's do a little research.
Okay, so Patricia. Delay that instruction. For the
Okay.
time being.
So yeah, I won't move on that.
Okay,
If there's any help I can give with research, let me know.
oh, thank you. All right,
Like infant formula all over, yeah. Or baby food.
okay, good.
Except we already have a few states ahead of us, so this might be an easier one.
We are going to have the agency person of Abby Willer to buy next on Maple. Morning, Abby.
Good morning.
Are you sharing your screen today?
I'm hoping to.
Is this your water bottle, Abby?
No.
No, that is Zach's.
Oh,
Zach left it here and I'll.
Agency.
Agency, I can, you
I can bring it over for
if
you.
you could bring it over for him, that'd be great, cause I called over there and said he'd left it here and
Okay,
need be, I'd run it over. It's either Zach's or the Maple Lady. Allison.
Oh, yeah,
I
okay.
think it's,
the color of maybe Allison's, but I don't know that for sure.
let me,
It's not that.
She needs a maple sticker on it, then we would know.
I know. That's true. Could be Zach's. I don't mean to prejudge.
let me, send out a little texto on that.
Do we have it?
It's taking me just a minute to get.
Good morning, Tucker.
Hi, good morning. Can
We're
you hear
gonna-
me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you fine, and I think Abby's just getting ready to share her screen. While we're waiting for that, we should have somebody hold up the little sample of very fancy
This,
Vermont syrup. Yeah, this,
Greg said it was his lightest syrup he ever made.
That is like
Pretty light.
incredibly light.
Yes, it is. It,
How does it taste? Do you
He said
I
it's
told him I
delicious.
wanted to taste it, and he said, open it up, and I said, I'll wait till you hear.
I'm curious.
Not enough for each of
I'm
us.
sure that's where he is today. Right?
yeah, no.
Yeah.
Ran all night.
We did run all night. Good.
No, froze low this morning.
Well, that's good to hear. I know that season's not been a full season quite yet, so
But we got bugs.
Oh, you do already?
I know.
that's not good. We're not ready.
Abby,
for-
I've made you a co-host, Abby.
Thank you. I think
Greg's got snow knee deep up in his woods, so.
that's it. That's the
Jack-
variability across
Jack's
the state. It's
Ross eating
unbelievable.
his peas already.
Really?
And I came over, I looked today coming down Route 12 up over the Huddy. There's a lot of snow along Route 12, a lot of snow.
Hi.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did that at once.
Did your town get savaged by those storms last night that were running across the banner on the
I
TV?
don't know. Yesterday morning, I woke up at 6 to thunder. And that went on for quite a while, like 45 minutes of
We're in Jasper.
pretty heavy rain. Yeah, yep.
Last night,
But
there was,
not wind, just heavy rain.
there were some pretty severe storms.
Well, there's a-
through down
There's a
south.
channel that goes like right through Albany that you must get a bunch of down there that we don't get.
Yeah, it's even just between like Manchester and Chester, there can be quite a difference too. Not elevation related, just,
Right.
you know, the path of storms. And well, good morning, and we can turn it over to you, I guess, Abby.
Okay, thanks for having the agency in to talk about the maple industry. I think Tucker and I, if the chair permits, we thought we would start by talking about the regulatory and inspection role that the agency plays in the work that Tucker does. And then I'll advance the slides for him, and then I'll talk on the ag development side, talk a little bit about the marketing that we do for maple, the investments that we've made over the last few years, and then some of the needs that have arisen from both the drought survey and some stakeholder conversations. So that's what we were prepared to share with you. Does that align with what the chair and the committee wanted to hear from us?
Lines well, I think. We had yesterday, Allison was in from the association, as you heard.
Yes.
And then later this morning, Mark is coming in, Mark Hisselhart, following you
Okay.
actually. So
Great.
we'll for context.
Yeah, Proctor will have great content.
Is Tucker full-time Maple or is he some percentage?
Well, Tucker can tell you all about it if you want to like start to hear from him. I think we've had some changes at the agency and kind of trying to really carve out the capacity to invest existing staff positions on both the regulatory and inspection side and on the development side. So I think we probably have, 1.25 FTEs total at the agency that are really working on maple. That's my guess, Tucker. I don't know what you would say, but
Yeah, I think that's a good ballpark.
Yeah.
Madison's name came up yesterday.
And Madison, right. So
Yeah.
Madison is the team member from within the ag development division that does most of the maple work. But then we have other staff within our marketing team that have done some of the maple marketing projects.
Okay,
Okay, great. I think you're ready to go, Tucker. You can tell me when you want me
Okay.
to advance the slides.
Yeah, thank you. And sorry, I can't be there in person today. Yeah, so I'll start with just a little introduction from myself. I am the director of our Food Safety and Consumer Protection Division. This is relatively recent for me. Our previous director, E.B. Flory, decided to take a bit of a step back and just focus primarily on the dairy program, and is actually on some medical leave right now. So my role has changed slightly, but I'm still involved in Maple, and between me and another one of our inspectors within the division, we are kind of the Maple regulatory specialists. So yeah, that's why I can talk quite a bit about Maple as being one of those specialists from the beginning. And I put together about 10 slides. I'm not sure how interested you are in any of these topics, but just as an overview of some of the activities that we're doing. Thanks, Abby. So as Abby mentioned, I can talk to the kind of regulatory aspect of it, and then Abby can share more of the promotional and the development part. But just to introduce the regulatory aspects that we do, it kind of falls into two categories. One is doing retail inspection, and the other one is a newer activity, but is to actually go and inspect our licensed processors. And so the retail inspections are actually looking at product offer for sale in the store to make sure they're meeting grade standards and labeling requirements. The inspections of the processors is a little bit different, and I'll get into that in future slides, but it's basically to make sure that they are meeting the food safety, the quality, and some of the record keeping requirements that we have in statute and in regulation. So next slide. So, and feel free to stop me at any point if you have questions. I'll start with the licensed dealer and processor inspections because this is somewhat new. We've always had this license, that hasn't changed. Right now we have about 28 licensees under these licenses, and they're very specific. And so the wording is right there on the slide if you're curious, but it's basically a license for anyone who purchases over 1,000 gallons or the higher level 2,500 gallons for repacking and reprocessing. So these are basically the 28 licensees under this category is basically our biggest maple packers. These are the big names in the industry that are packing, estimates of maybe 80% or more of all the syrup that gets produced would need one of these licenses. So next slide, please.
Tucker,
Yep.
the distinction between dealer and processor is partly the number of gallons, but also processing is in the definition of processor.
Yes. I'm not entirely sure why that wording is slightly different between the two, to be honest, but the main difference is the volume or the quantity purchased. And these, like I said, like this license has existed for quite a while, and these thresholds of 1,000 and 2,500 are maybe they don't quite match with what the scales that we see among the licensees. There are some that are really, really big and then some that are smaller. So I'm not really sure why these thresholds were chosen originally, but this is what we have currently.
So might be a question at some point of examining whether those are reasonable or helpful numbers.
It could be a consideration. Yeah, I think so. They also have different license fees. The lower one is 30 and the higher one is 125. So,
But thank you.
yep. So the new aspect to this is the agency historically used to visit and inspect these licensees, but I started in 2016 at the agency, and they, for whatever reason, those inspections hadn't really been happening for about past decade or so. And so we felt like it was important to stay connected with these packers that are processing potentially 80%. That's a very rough estimate, but somewhere in that ballpark of all the syrup that's going through the state. And so in 2024, we did outreach to the industry, developed some informational, actually did an informational session and recorded it on our website, and refined the inspection criteria. Again, nothing is new in these criteria. They're all what's existing in the statute and the regulation, but we were trying to provide some additional education to those licensees, and with the approach of renewing those inspections in July of 2025. And so if you go to the next slide. So those have begun. We've done about a third of those initial visits to those licensees. And it's been, at least for me and my staff, been really helpful and just really beneficial to reconnect with some of these really important industry leaders, really. And we're also, it's kind of, we're getting educated as we're trying to help educate the industry as well in terms of the criteria. So we're going to continue to go through those, and we'll probably finish those initial ones by the end of FY27. And one of the, actually, if you can just stay on the phone for 1 second. I just wanted to, one of the main emphasis of these visits is part about records and traceability. So if a product says it's Vermont maple syrup, how do we know Vermont maple syrup is in that container? And by doing these inspections, this is one of our best ways to verify that. So they have to keep records of the amount of syrup they purchased from Vermont, from Canada, from somewhere else. And part of these visits, we're actually doing some traceability to say, okay, show me a product, let's trace it back to actually the bulk syrup that was put in that package and labeled as Vermont or not. So in a nutshell, that's kind of one of the key aspects of this inspection, and it really helps us be able to answer that question, which we do get a lot of, how do you know it's Vermont maple syrup? How do you know it's meeting our standards? So, so that's the processor inspection. We can move forward.
Representative O'Brien, question?
Tucker, I just wondered, does it have to be 100% Vermont maple syrup?
Yes, to be labeled as a Vermont product, yes.
Representative Brigham?
Yeah, are you doing just in-state processing, or I know there's guys running around from Ohio and different spots trying to buy syrup?
Yes.
In county, how does that get regulated?
So they do require a license with us if they're purchasing Vermont syrup. I think the example you shared of, if it's the same individual, I've spoken to him several times, and we are working to get that operation licensed. So yes, it can be challenging though to license an out-of-state organization if they don't have a footprint in Vermont. But yeah, short answer is yes, it does apply. And we have some Canadian, actually, we do have some Canadian and New Hampshire businesses as well that are licensed under that. We can't do a physical inspection of them. But what we can do is require those record keeping components.
When you say it can be challenging if they don't have a footprint, I mean, I can imagine that it can be challenging, but is it legally challenging or just logistically challenging?
I would say, I guess it's more logistically. Legally, I couldn't really say. It hasn't been an issue at this point, but perhaps it could. Most of those that have had that license that are out of state are still physically in the region, like New Hampshire, for example. It gets when we're talking about someone in Ohio, for example, it's a little bit different. So, but we're working through it, and I think we're getting those that need license. So
These are businesses that are based somewhere out of state. They're buying syrup, finished syrup, transporting it to another state, and then packaging it as Vermont syrup or not, maybe?
yes.
Yes.
So, well, they can do both, right? So they can,
yeah.
If they label it as Vermont syrup, we need to see copies of those labels and review their records, the traceability element to that.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're not apt to bring it back to Vermont though, to sell.
No,
They're
they would
using
be
it,
free to.
they're using the Vermont name as a kind of a sales thing. So like you
Yeah.
say, it'd be hard to drive out there. You know, it's getting syrup from all over syrup country, so you don't, how are you gonna know? But people in the stores, they're getting Vermont syrup to price the Coke then.
While we're on the subject, if it hasn't gotten to syrup yet, if it's sap or concentrated sap, are you also regulating that, and is that an issue at all?
This license wouldn't apply to sap. It's only for the sale of the purchase of syrup. So that wouldn't be licensed or regulated in the same way.
John?
I wondered if, because Vermont maple syrup has a certain cachet, whether almost no Vermont maple syrup gets blended, into something that just says maple syrup. Is pretty much all Vermont maple syrup, whether it goes, to Bascom's or Butternut or wherever, does it all end up as Vermont maple syrup pretty much?
I think that'd be a good question for the industry and maybe the association. I know anecdotally that I don't believe that's always the case. But I think the producers could probably speak better to that. I know sometimes it can be tricky when, especially when it's like they've got a product that needs to be organic or conventional, and they have let's say a contract with a retailer, and just maintaining that contract specifications sometimes can be tricky. And so that might be part of a reason why a Vermont syrup would be packaged into something that's ultimately not labeled as just Vermont. But
So Tucker, in general, those processors you just mentioned, and dealers, they would be, for example, the ones who, if they have a contract with Costco for Vermont maple syrup, they would actually do the bottling and provide the retailer with it.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's big difference.
And they've
It
been
comes out of
really,
Maple Grove. But they don't call it maple syrup. But it is a Vermont, well, theoretically a Vermont maple product unless they get stuff in Canada, repackage it. Cracker Barrel. You know, prior to 2009, they used to be pure maple syrup, of course, prices, and now it's better than Aunt Jemima, but it's 55% maple and 45% cane syrup, but they don't claim it to be pure maple syrup.
and on that topic, we also review labels. So when they have come up with a new product, like something like that would be a blended product, we can give them feedback on what specifically they need on that label. And in that case, it needs to have that percentage of maple syrup. Okay, the next category of inspections is the retail inspection. So this is actually looking at any maple product offered for sale at the point of sale. And we've been doing this for about 5 years now, and every year we post a summary on the website, on our agency website, and it just so happens that last year was not a great year for compliance. We've seen this is probably our lowest year of a pass rate of 50%. I think it's typically in the 60s, maybe low 70s, but that's what it was this year. If you next slide.
Can I ask a question, actually? What would make you not pass inspection? Like what would be the problems? Because that's a lot of problems.
It is. So if we go to the next slide, I've got
Okay.
a chart for you.
Oh, there we
here.
go. Okay.
Yeah. And so this is the breakdown of what would have caused something to not pass an inspection. The inspection is looking at the quality standards for grade A maple. And that includes color, flavor, clarity, density, and labeling. And as you can see here, by and far, the biggest issue is color. And this is a well-known issue across the industry, and there aren't many good ways to avoid having syrup darken, particularly in plastic containers over time. It will naturally do that in a plastic container. And if it darkens beyond the color limit for that grade, it will technically be out of grade. Now, it would technically fail an inspection. It is not a very critical issue, I would say. It's more of a technical grade violation. The syrup is perfectly fine. It could simply be regraded with the darker grade if it's too dark, and continue to be sold. So it does account for most of the issues, but I would say it's more of a technical issue. The ones that we tend to focus more on or would be more critical are, I would say on this chart, would be low density and off flavor. Low density means it would.
Tucker, could you explain to us, you have really, I believe we have pretty strict standards on density. And what would be the issue with too high a density?
Yeah, so there is a technical maximum of density for grade A syrup. So that's what we're looking for. If a syrup is too dense, it can crystallize, the sugar crystals can crystallize and be visible there. Now, again, high densities, I would say it's more of a technical violation because there is a range in the rules. But the low density is really what's more critical. at low density, that's where we see we're concerned about mold forming and the quality of the syrup really deteriorating. And also it's also not meeting our Vermont standard, which is slightly higher than other states. And so if I were to put emphasis on any of these, I would probably put it on low density and the off flavors. And together they were about 26% from last year.
I have a question about the color. You said that it will darken in plastic over time, but I thought the color also related to flavor. So as it darkens over time, does the flavor change? Is that the whole issue when we did the regrading was color standard and relating it to flavor?
Yeah.
Does it actually
and I think,
change flavor as it gets darker over time?
Yeah, I think this is it's also a good question for Mark Isselhard. I think he would have like a pretty good perspective on this. I don't think it has that big of an effect on the flavor, having done grading for quite a while now. Could there be an effect? Yes. I'd be interested to hear if Mark feels strongly one way or the other. But we are looking for flavor, and the flavor should be within the grade that it's labeled as. But our emphasis when we're checking for flavor is primarily to pick up off flavors, and those are things that could be some of the natural off flavors, buddy metabolism, for example, or other off flavors that could indicate something went wrong in production, and there might be something in that syrup that's not safe or that shouldn't be there. So any type of chemical or chemical or metallic off flavor, and ferment, sour syrup are big ones too. And so those are certainly one of the emphasis that we have when we're doing these inspections at retail. And you can keep going, Abby.
Since everyone's gone to tubing most, and you don't get the mouse in the sat bucket, that always added.
Off flavor.
Yeah.
They also
Never say never.
Tucker, I just wondered on flavor, is there a way to scientifically test for flavor? I mean, we all know like, buddy syrup or metallic syrup, but it seems like a lot of that would be more in the taster's taste buds.
Yeah. That is a really good question. And I would suggest sharing that with Mark Isselhard as well. Myself and my other maple inspector were lucky enough to join a sensory panel training with Mark and some other experts at UVM Extension to basically practice doing exactly that, is in practice evaluating flavor, specifically of maple syrup, in a more scientific way. And this is through the sensory training. And the reason I'm deferring to Mark is because he has done a lot more of that training than I have and can speak to some of the specifics of how that training is designed. But it is designed to give more of an objective analysis of what we're tasting when we're talking about flavor.
Wow, great, thank you.
Okay, I know Abby has several slides too, so I'll try and just breeze through these ones. These are some of the characteristics that we are looking at when we're doing grading, and whenever we're doing this, we're also giving feedback to the producer to help them identify what the problem could have been. And so when it's color, there are a bunch of different instruments that a producer might use to look at color, and they all have pros and cons. So a lot of them are using the temporary grading kit provided by the association, which is great. It's cheap, it's easy to use, but it doesn't last forever. And there are some more durable equipment they can use. Some of them are more expensive than others. But whenever it's an issue of color, we'll talk about some of the instruments and their pros and cons. And you can go to the next slide. Again, for density, Vermont has a slightly higher density standard than USDA and most other states. Our hydrometers must be inspected by our weights and measures lab down in Randolph. And you know, we're using hydrometers when we're doing our field inspections to check for density. And they're a great piece of equipment, but they don't last forever. And sometimes the best solution is to replace the old hydrometers that might have done a great job for many years, but having some newer ones and some ones to test against each other can be really helpful to know when one hydrometer might be no longer reading accurately. So.
Tucker, is the difference between Vermont's standard for density and other jurisdictions perceptible to a consumer?
I think that's part of the goal. The higher density will it basically means there's more sugar in Vermont maple syrup than someone else's syrup. And the viscosity, the mouthfeel might be slightly different. I would say that's what a trained flavored grader might say. Your average customer, they might tell the difference, they might not. I don't know. But they're
pancakes.
They what?
The stickability to pancakes.
Representative Brigham.
So something we're doing different this year, the packer we sell to in Johnson there, we're putting a thermometer when we fill the barrel, and we're having to record the temperature along with the reading on the hydrometer. We've been testing two ways. We have one of those cups with the thermometer on the side. You know, try to do it two different ways. But the real bummer is when the paper slides down in your hydrometer and you don't know that's happened.
Right.
So we
Yeah,
try to get a
exactly.
new one.
Yeah. Representative Bartholomew.
On the slide there, allowable range, I don't know those words. What do those mean? Bricks and what's the other one?
Baume. Yeah, so those are the two ways to measure density for maple. They're two different, blanking on the word. Yeah, it's like Fahrenheit and Celsius, but for density. And Vermont's statute and regulations were written as Baume being the formal standard for density, and that's why we still use it, but the industry predominantly uses bricks. I list it there on this slide. This is the same slide I share with producers at their annual conference. I share it there because those numbers are all equivalent. They're just using different scales, the Baume scale and the brick scale, and then converting at different temperatures, temperature conversions. So they're all the same range, just at different, using different scales.
They're at essentially room temperature, so not when it's hot, not when it's boiling.
Correct. That's what yeah. So we could look at the hot range, but this is the one that we use most frequently because we're inspecting product that's on a store shelf and room temperature. But when you're taking it off the evaporator, it's going to be, much hotter, and you'll be looking at a different reference for that. And that's why you can see on the hydrometer in the picture, there's two different red marks there, and there's actually different scales on that hydrometer to be able to check hot versus cold. All right, I've got a few more and then I'll wrap up. We didn't see much mold in the past year, but that is something we're looking for. And like I said, these are some of the slides I use for educating producers, and just a reminder that ensuring a hot pack, a good seal, keeping containers and packaging supplies clean and in a clean space is really important. And in terms of packing temperature, that is something that we're looking at when we're doing those licensee inspections. It's typically 180 degrees Fahrenheit for a minimum packing temperature. Want to ensure we stay above that. And next slide. And then labeling. So this is a picture of mason jars on a store shelf, and they have a grade sticker on the top, but they have nothing else. So we are looking for some basic labeling requirements, and we're in Vermont, so we assume that's maple syrup, but maybe someone out of state might not know that is a mason jar of syrup. And so, yeah, so these are the basic requirements for labeling. And one thing that not everyone is aware of, but every packaged container needs a batch code. And that can be a simple number code, handwritten on the bottom or somewhere that's visible, but that allows for traceability in case there was an issue with that container. And that concludes my portion.
Any other questions for Tucker? Thank you very much. Always informative. Okay, well, we'll turn it over to you then, Ed.
Okay, for the record, Abby Willard, Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets. I'm the director of the Agriculture Development Division. I love listening to Tucker talk. I learned what makes Vermont, at least one reason, what makes Vermont maple syrup a little bit better than our competitors. Good to know that having a little bit more sugar and higher density makes the difference. So again, I think we'll share a little bit about the maple marketing investments that we make in the industry, talk about some of the grant investments, and then some of the needs and kind of challenges that we're seeing from the industry. In the last 5 years or so, I would say we've made about $2 million of economic development investment in the maple sector, both in like direct grants to producers, supporting research and development within the maple industry, and then a variety of different kind of like marketing and support efforts that our staff provide and our partnership with the Vermont Maple Sugar Makers Association offers. So we'll just touch on some of those investments that we've made. I will note that historically our agency has lots of images of spouts and buckets, and we've really focused on trying to capture imagery that shows the modernization and the technological advancement that the sugaring industry has made in the past few decades. So a lot of the kind of images really show the complexity of what's happening in the woods and then what can be happening in the sugar house as well.
Representative Nelson.
Abby,
Yeah.
this modernization of maple has been great and for efficiencies, and we know, we heard yesterday how our production has ramped up incredible since 2005, I think it was. And the price of maple really hasn't kept up with inflation at all. So it's been through efficiencies that have allowed our maple producers still to strive and to thrive. is there any concern from the environmental world out there? What we're doing in the forest? Is that any concern to the agency and the maple industry to deflect that type of comment or aspect?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is also a good question for Mark Iselhart. You'll have a long list when he comes in at 11 o'clock, but I think it depends. I think having a vibrant working landscape in Vermont's really important to our agency and to many Vermonters. So to see an industry continue to thrive and expand and grow, carrying on traditions that are multi-generational is really a valuable use of our lands. Similar to agriculture, sugar makers need healthy sugar maples. So they're making good management decisions in the woods about how to sort of foster a healthy stand of sugar maples. Sometimes that means going in and doing some selective cutting. Sometimes that means changing what trees they're tapping, so that they get the best production possible from that sugar bush. There have been, and we've talked a little bit about this, I'm not the expert on this, of like some of the water quality implications of having larger operations. And there's now some kind of guidance and resources available through our agency and on our website, as well as with ANR, about sugar makers that have, reverse osmosis machines and are reintroducing water into onto the landscape, and at what temperature and what mineral load. And, there are some environmental considerations around the sugaring operation at the sugar house. So those are the thoughts that I'm having. I think generally it's about stewardship, and I think sugar makers want to see healthy forests so that they can continue to make maple syrup, kind of continue the Vermont brand.
Does the agency regulate, or is there another agency at the state that, or somewhere, that is doing anything other than offering guidance?
I believe that the Agency of Natural Resources does provide some regulatory authority over kind of like water entering a surface water from a sugar house.
Yeah.
But again, that's sort of like, and I think that our agency has helped provide some guidance and some materials, and maybe even some cost share assistance to support businesses. And as they're expanding or ramping up and they're seeing that they have more water related issues, or they're close to a surface water, what practices they can put in place to be compliant.
Just to follow up on that, are those gonna be embedded in the wraps then?
That's a question that I don't know. They probably are, and I don't know the specifics of that. But maybe you do.
Before we're done.
Yeah. Yes. But it's a great question, and I'm sorry I can't answer it any more comprehensively than that.
Good query, Mark.
Yeah, see what he has to say. He's got lots of good answers, lots of good knowledge. So on the maple marketing front, so I thought I would just start here. So the agency has, as Tucker and I mentioned, probably 1.25 full-time equivalent staff spread across 4 different people that are focusing on maple. And some of that work is on the maple marketing side, in addition to the regulatory and compliance and inspection work that Tucker mentioned that his division is focused on. So our division applies for federal grants. So U.S. Department of Agriculture has an ACER grant program that we've been a recipient of grants in the past. And the last award that we received was in 2021. We're hoping to see one for 2026 be released by USDA. It hasn't been announced yet. So we're sort of like, we're ready to apply once we see an application released. But in 2021, we had a project that was focused on expanding consumer engagement and awareness of Vermont maple and US maple both. So there was a variety of projects that grant focused on, which was creating a lot of maple imagery that could be available through the Vermont Maple Sugar Makers Association, revamping their website to be even more educational resource, that they could provide both to producers and to interested consumers. It was really important that we think about maple beyond just kind of its stickiness to pancakes and breakfast material, but also as a use in sauces. So we started a project of Maple Meats Texas Barbecue, which was like really trying to promote Vermont maple, where they have a lot of barbecue sauces and hot sauces and other condiments that are used in other parts of the country. You may recall the Maple 100 event, which was sort of a campaign of sort of just celebrating a variety of different maple events that were happening across Vermont, not just during the sugaring season and not just during Maple Open House weekend, but all sorts of consumer-friendly events to celebrate maple. And so through some of this increased consumer engagement work that we did, it raised the number of businesses that were promoting activities on that Maple 100 site to over 225 businesses. There was a collection of over 10,000 attendees at each of those different events. And then a lot of social media messaging. So over 2 million different posts, or what they call impressions, of celebrating and showcasing maple syrup operations or maple products or maple events and engagements with the consumer. So we're looking forward to seeing USDA release the next ACER round of competitive application requests, and we're ready to work to submit another proposal for something similar. Trade show assistance, those are small grants that we provide to all ag producers to help them exhibit their products at domestic or international business-to-business trade shows. And in between fiscal year 20 and this current year, there was 43,000, almost 43,000 in trade show assistance grant support that went to maple producers. And then the last sort of, but really most exciting and important piece to our marketing effort, in addition to what the Food Safety Consumer Protection Division's efforts are, has been this pricing project where, and I'll show a couple slides here of where our staff, beginning in July of 2025, started collecting pricing data on both sap and syrup. And so I have two different slides here to show what we produce each month. So this is a maple syrup report. I picked one from October of last year, but they're produced every month. Some months have more activity in sales than others. We provide producers a small kind of like stipend to encourage them to participate in sharing their data. And so then they'll share with us the sales and price data across all the different color grades, as well as across 3 different market channels. So retail, wholesale, and then bulk, which is just off the screen here that I couldn't screenshot for you to see. And then all that data is aggregated and shared on our website in this interactive, what we call dashboard, each month. And so this is where you can see kind of the price per pound across the 3 different market channels over time. So starting in July of 2025, we were collecting June of 2025 data through to present, where we've collected February 26 data. And again, the industry has really responded well to being able to reference this interactive information on a monthly basis of sort of like, how is the price fluctuating? What are sales looking like? Where's syrup being sold in which different market channel? We capture certified organic sales and prices as well, if we wanted to differentiate by organic. And then we're capturing both processed grade syrup prices and sales, as well as unprocessed sap prices. So this has been a really valuable kind of like new information tool that we've been able to provide the industry. We currently have funding to continue to do this through September, through the end of this federal fiscal year. And that's been supported again by funding through U.S. Department of Agriculture Ag Marketing Service. And we're in the process of pursuing some additional resources to be able to continue this price reporting ongoing. So I hope that it looks like that's going to be successful. So in addition to those marketing investments that we've made, then there's the actual cash investments that we make towards actual maple producers or the maple industry more generally. So there's 3 different programs that we wanted to highlight, both the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative grants, The one ag development grants that we'll talk about that this committee was instrumental in seeing happen in fiscal year 24. And then another federal source of funding through US Department of Agriculture called the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program. And collectively, that's been about $1.3 million invested in the last few years, last 5+ years. So working lands data, you know, you've heard a lot about this program, heard from a lot of different grantees, and the program tracks the grant funds that are invested by business sector from the beginning of when the program was initiated. So in fiscal year 13 through the current round of grants that were awarded in fiscal year 25. So just about $500,000 invested in maple production and maple products, maple producers since the start of that program. So that's out of $19.5 million of grant investments, $500,000 has gone to the maple sector. So still a relatively, small amount of investment, I think overall, when you consider the scale of the maple industry's growth over the past, 15 years. And these again would be grants to producers to help them make modernization improvements or efficiency in production or workforce adjustments to be able to have their business model be more effective. One grant testimony just to share with you is from Carmen Brook Farm, which was a fiscal year 25 awardee. So they received $50,000 there in Swanton. And they shared that their project was to install, and I have to read this because they're pieces of equipment that I'm not all that familiar with, a heat exchanger system, a 4-head semi-automatic bottling line, an electric steam kettle, candy dipping reservoir, and a candy syrup vacuum sealing system. All of those sort of like processing infrastructure was able to reduce their bottling production times by about 50%, which allowed them to increase labor efficiency. It improved their product consistency and increased the shelf life of their candy by from 4 to 6 weeks to up to 9 months. So what was most exciting about this project, and I think is very emblematic of Working Lands investments, is that this grantee was able to say through this relatively small $50,000 grant, they were really able to make a shift from being able to focus in their business to be able to spend time on their business. And so they shared, they're able to work on marketing, they're able to work on more communication with buyers, they're able to think more about their labeling and the way that they showcase their product as opposed to all their effort being focused on production. So that's an example of kind of a Working Lands grant investment on a sugaring operation. In fiscal year 24, this body and this committee more specifically supported the Ag Development Grant Program. So this was a specific granting program to invest in meat, maple, and produce operations. There was $2.3 million that the Vermont legislature appropriated for this purpose. And a quarter of that needed to be dedicated to the maple industry. And so this was the first ever granting program at the Agency of Agriculture specifically focused on maple producers and processors. So in fiscal year 24, there were 12 awards that we were able to make to maple producers and processors across 8 counties and just over $540,000 in grants. Again, they were relatively small grants. Some were in the $20,000 range up to $100,000. I think it's important, we haven't talked about these ag development grants in a while in this committee, but just for reference, there were just on the maple side. So then there were also produce applications and meat producer and meat processor applications. There were over 330 applications from maple producers requesting over $18 million. I'm sorry, Representative Brigham, that your award didn't.
Next time.
Yeah, and I hope there is a next time, because I think this was a really successful program that really targeted 3 diversified, expanding industries in Vermont. And the projects were really exciting. And we funded as many as we could, knowing that there were many great projects that we had to turn down.
Nothing.
With these grants, and we had this discussion earlier on our committee with the Working Lands. Are there requirements for matching funds from the grant receivers?
I don't think there were match requirements in this program.
Not this one, some of the work in land.
Many of the, so historically, and I know we can talk about this, the kind of match topic at another time or any time. Match had historically been a requirement of working lands enterprise applications. There had been a desire to experiment with what if we removed the match requirement, would we see smaller businesses be more successful at receiving a grant because they may not have the capital or the cash or the labor capacity to be able to provide in-kind support on a project. So starting in fiscal year 24, we removed that match, what was perceived as a match barrier for small businesses to be able to receive grants. As has been the case with working lands, similarly with the ag development grant, many producers imagined a far larger project than they were receiving grant funds for. So many were contributing match, regardless of it being a requirement of the project.
I mean, before time runs out, I just wonder how the agency is navigating the whole sort of hemp move, because there's a lot of crossover between maple and, I'm just looking here, THC and hemp derived CBD type things. So is that all going to move out of the agency?
Potentially, yeah. I think that's seems to be the direction that it may be moving in, yeah. Let me just try to go through these quickly. If you have questions around the ag development grants, these were the kind of projects that primarily were funded, which is around production and processing efficiency, storage capacity, monitoring efficiency in the woods, and some food safety and quality improvement. So all really critical industry investments. The last granting program to share with you is the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program. So this is a federal program that we receive, block grant funding from USDA. These are not grants that go to producers. So the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program is designed to enhance the competitiveness of specialty crops, of which the maple industry is one of them. And so most of the grants go towards research and development. They go towards supporting the Vermont Maple Sugar Makers Association or other organizations that are working on behalf of expanding the competitiveness of maple in the economy. So not to individual grants or to individual producers. Acer was the first project that was the marketing that I was mentioning. This specialty crop block grants we've hosted for many years at the agency, but it's really more we focus on funding UVM extension or Procter Maple Research or doing a maple branding campaign. Looking at, agritourism opportunities to bring people to Vermont to engage in authentic maple events. So it's really more supporting the support organizations that help the maple economy.
Just to follow that,
Yeah.
give us some context. Are there other things in ag that you use the specialty crop block grants for?
Yeah, a lot of produce industry engagement, Christmas trees could be a focus. Like herb production,
Vegetable washing stuff.
yeah, anything that's on a produce farm, any fruit and vegetable are kind of like some of the primary projects. Yeah. Okay, so then lastly, I just wanted to share some of the needs and concerns that we're hearing from the industry. So back in 2025, the agency started hosting maple stakeholder meetings on a quarterly basis. So bringing together both the regulatory and the development side at the agency with UVM, with the Vermont Maple Sugar Makers Association, Procter, to talk about like, what are you seeing in the industry? What are you hearing about? What are some of the outreach opportunities, some of the development potential? And those meetings happen quarterly. And it's a really great opportunity for kind of like the collective maple community to get together and talk about what they're doing, what they're hearing, and what they're seeing. The issues that I just wanted you to hear from me, and maybe Mark and others will reiterate, that there was the discussion and concern around tariffs. Well, maybe not on the maple product itself, but on equipment that's oftentimes being imported from Canada. And then on the materials, so aluminum, steel, glass, which are really critical to the infrastructure and to the packaging for many of our maple products. And then really thinking about food safety. and recognizing that there's a wide array, maybe that showed up in the retail inspections that Tucker and his team did in kind of maple food safety practices happening at the Sugar House across Vermont. So those are just some pieces for the committee to be aware of and know that the industry is engaging in these conversations every couple of months.
Representative Brigham.
Could you touch, I don't know if this is part of that. Doesn't Vermont have the lowest lead level for maple syrup? Any other food?
You know, I don't know, Representative Brigham, about that exactly. I think, Tucker, is there anything that you want to offer on the lead in maple conversation?
Yes, just to say that we did work with our health department to review that in the past few years, I think starting in 2023. And we do have a revised recommended action level that we're now using. And yeah, basically, I mean, it's really nothing new that we don't want to see lead in really any food products. But that is something that we worked on with the health department. They're the experts in terms of the health risks there. So short answer is yes.
Really quickly, last comments I'll just share. So like sugaring season is still upon us. When we did the ag drought loss and damage survey, it was between October and December. It closed before the sugaring season started, but we did still receive results from 8 sugar makers, 6 across 6 counties, 7 towns. You can see the distribution of the responses on this map from maple operations that we heard from. They outlined a disproportionate amount of anticipated estimated loss due to the drought conditions. There was a lot of anxiety and worry that the very dry summer and fall would affect sap production and then resultant syrup production this spring. So it's been a funky spring anyway for sugaring. I think we're still in it, hopefully, for certain parts of the state. But again, hearing that when we start to see buds form, that usually is the indication of the end of the sugaring season in certain parts of Vermont. So the last slide, this is also from the ag survey on just the maple specific data. I just want to note that the maple industry identified a higher than average estimated loss. So they were saying that the 1.5 million in losses out of the 15.4 million was estimated by the maple industry. The average loss across all applicants, or not applicants, I guess, survey respondents was in the $77,000 range, and the average estimated loss from the sugar makers was 3 times that. They were over $190,000 of what they estimated as losses. And still feeling very vulnerable to future weather events, worried about the financial implications of the drought and the effects that may have on their industry. So recognizing that many of the drought impacts on maple are still unrealized, there's an opportunity for us to continue to engage with the industry as we move towards the end of the season and see what they want to share and what their overall experience was. That's it. Just in time. Mark here? Oh, great. Anyway.
Good, I think that is your last slide.
Yep.
Difficult, I imagine, once the season does wind up and it's April, it's kind of, I think we should be celebrating that there's still some sap running in April.
Yeah, definitely.
That's always the case these days, but the impact that the drought might have had would be difficult to measure, I would think, at the end of the day, compared with other factors that might be contributing.
Yeah, and I think that it's different than a flood where it's likely a, one episodic moment where, crops are ruined or something happens in the field or infrastructure is damaged. Yeah, I think the drought season was, many consecutive days of harsher weather, and that combined with what kind of a winter we had and what kind of a season it is are all factors that could influence what kind of a sugaring season overall we have for 2026. So, yeah, I think though the industry, they know their operation, they generally know their trees, they know their woods, like they know when things are not what they expect. And usually have some good indications of why that might be. A lot of historical knowledge and experience helps them kind of give us a sense of where they think the cause may be, but often it's complex. It's not a single source.
Before we let you go, and I think we'll take a short break just for the committee. Some of us have been sitting still for an hour.
Sitting in a car,
Yeah, okay, yeah. You've been
my third trip back.
Oh, boy.
Not even know.